Good morning, everyone. Y'all are probably tired of seeing me come up here and set up with all my stuff, so I'll just get right into it. This might be a hard case because it involves young people. It might be difficult because it involves young people, right? But it is not a complicated case. It is a case about the most basic right that any of us have, which is the right to defend ourselves when we're faced with people that are intent on doing us serious physical harm. It could be as much as death, serious disfigurement, and all the other things you're going to hear about in that instruction. You've heard from the state here telling you, I guess, that Lido Valley is a criminal mastermind who came over there with the plan to be able to use all of this so that now I can claim self-defense. You heard Mr. Valle get on the stand. Mr. Valle, a criminal mastermind, can put together a plan like that? And back home, we'd say, son, bless your heart, but that was mighty stupid. There was a whole lot of stupid to go around that night. There was a fire that got lit earlier in the night, and it started with all that drinking that was going on. And nobody there to say, what are we doing? How do we come into all of this? That's the first fire that was lit. And there were a lot more along the way. But again, not a complicated case. Mr. Valle took the stand, he talked to you, he didn't have to do that. Mr. Valle used a 3-inch pocket knife that Jack Snyder gave him, that Jack Snyder brought, that Mr. Valle didn't even know existed prior to that night. Mr. Valle didn't even know existed prior to Mr. Snyder giving it to him. Where was Lido Valley seated when Jack Snyder pulled that knife out and had it on his lap? Was he in the front passenger seat? No. That was Tyler Da Silva. Lido Valley is behind him with Mackenzie Trafficante on his lap. There's no way he can see that knife in Jack Snyder's lap. And Jack Snyder's the one who told you he took that out and put it in his own lap because he was so scared about what was going on. So Lido Valley can't see that knife, doesn't know it exists. Mr. Snyder told you that there was no way that Mr. Valle could have known it was there before. He'd never brought it out. He'd never said to him, hey, I got this knife. Let's go riding over to 43 LGD and get a little payback. None of that happened. So it doesn't make any sense when Jack Snyder tells you that Lido Valley asked him for a knife that he didn't even know existed. Now I get it. Maybe some of you want to believe Jack Snyder and Tyler Da Silva. Maybe you say to yourself, gosh, those kids, nice looking kids, they get up here on the stand. Why shouldn't I believe them? Well, ask yourself, why should you believe them over Mr. Valle? Is there something about Mr. Valle and the way he came up here and took the stand and testified that tells you you should disbelieve him but believe those two? I didn't hear the state talk at all about Exhibits 94 and 96 when they were up here. Did you? What are Exhibits 94 and 96? I bet you remember. I hope it weighed heavily on your mind. Imagine if I came up here and asked you to believe witnesses. I can't even call them paid witnesses. They have something more valuable than any money they could ever be given. What is more valuable than a complete immunity agreement? Anything? Is there anything that a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid would not come up here and do or say in order to avoid any penalty whatsoever for their actions. Does that bother you? Does that disturb you? It should. Does that sound like justice for all? Does that sound like justice for some? Does that sound like equal justice to you? Gonna give those two kids immunity agreements. Jack Snyder drove the car over there, gives the knife over to my client. Tyler Da Silva gets in that same car, rides over there to 43 Laurel Glen Drive, says he's gonna go make peace. Listen, there was a lot of stupid going around that night. Tyler Da Silva got up here on the stand and told you, well, I thought I could go up and talk to them because I didn't have a problem with them. Maybe he did. Maybe some of you sitting here look at these kids and think of your own kids. State's attorney did. I know I did. Would any of you put your faith in something as important as this in a 16 or 17-year-old? Would you have reason to doubt that maybe they would fail to go to the grocery store and get everything that you had for them on a list? But we're going to sit here and expect these folks to give us the evidence that we need in order to convict somebody of murder who's charged with the same things that these folks could and should be charged with. They told you that. They know what they're exposed to. I went over it with them. I asked them about it. They know exactly what they're doing when they're coming in here. Jack Snyder's story doesn't make any sense. He gave him the knife because he asked for the knife that he didn't know existed. It's not just implausible. It's not just improbable. It is impossible. You don't ask for something that you don't know exists. He didn't know it existed before that moment. So we watched the Ring video. The Ring video is the 36 Laurel Glen Drive. That's Exhibit 44. You'll have that available to you. You see the car stop. You see Mackenzie get out. She's walking up ahead. Raul's already on the curb, a little ashamed, in a bad situation here. Mackenzie's obviously upset with him. She's walking down towards the curb. Tyler Da Silva gets out of the front. And then the car stops. And it's there for some time before it drives off. And Mr. Valle told you that's when Jack Snyder threw him the knife and said, just in case. Just in case what? Just in case this situation that I caused over here at 43 Laurel Glen Drive comes running down the street at you, throwing things and hollering things, and I'm about to drive off and leave you? Does that make more sense than, he was pissed off. He was the most pissed off. He was angrier than anybody else there. And he asked me for that knife that he didn't know existed. Jack Snyder has every incentive in the world to make these folks and you promises that he just can't deliver on. He's got there is no more powerful incentive in the whole world than what he's got. What are the terms of that agreement that he was given? He's got to come in here and testify truthfully. But who makes that determination? Who's he working for when he's under that immunity agreement? Not me. Not you. The state. And what did they all tell you, almost without fail, about what they did before they came in here? They met with the state's attorney a number of times. To do what? To get ready, to make sure that when they took that stand, they were going to testify truthfully. And I put air quotes around that, because what does truthfully mean in this instance? To those guys, as they told you, it meant not deviating from the things that they had said. the things that they waited 7 months and after they'd gotten an immunity agreement before they were going to say anything. Now, when we were in here during jury selection, some of you said, well, there can be a lot of gray. There's more than two sides to every story. That was a bit of truth. How many sides to a story did we get here? And some of you said, well, a lot of people will lie. And you said that maybe you had a little bit of an idea about what had happened here. You've got way more of an idea now about what happened here. And some of you said, well, I don't expect everyone to testify truthfully. People may want to defend or protect their families. You need more than just common sense to determine credibility. Some of you said you had an experience with a kangaroo court. And you know what that's like. Don't turn this into a kangaroo court by putting any more weight into the testimony of Tyler Da Silva and Jack Snyder than what it deserves. And it doesn't deserve any more weight than the paper and the ink on which it is written, because that incentive is overwhelming. That's more than just defending your friends or your family. That's defending yourself. And some of you said, if we don't follow the law, our system wouldn't work. It's not here just for one person. It's not here just for a few people. It's here for all of us. And that's right. You all take seats that were laid out for you hundreds of years ago. You come in and you take those seats. And you got to put your sympathy aside. Sympathy for the victim, sympathy for the complainant, sympathy for anybody. It's got no place here. Some of you have experience taking things through a process, doing quality control and making sure that everything has been met along the way. Use that experience here. Does this make sense? Would this pass through quality control? I told you before, some of these witnesses, if not all of them, are promising more than they can deliver. Imagine if somebody tells you something that just can't be true. Somebody tells you they got to make a delivery and it's going to take them an hour and a half to get from here, in the middle of the day, through the city, down to D.C. in 3.5 hours. They're making you a promise because they want you to believe them. They know you'd be really happy if they could actually make that trip, but they can't deliver on that. That's more than what they could possibly do. That's what these witnesses are doing for you. They're telling you things that they can see that couldn't have been seen. Why are they doing that? They want to avoid consequences that Mr. Valle is now saddled with. They want to protect themselves. They want to protect their friends. And they want to protect the memory of a loved one that they lost. Now, during jury selection, I asked you all if you could be open to the idea of self-defense. And to a person, you told me that you could. Some of you said you'd had to use some self-defense before. And you said you'd be open to it and you could understand that the law allows you to use self-defense. defend yourself, to defend loved ones. Whether or not you had experience with doing that, you said you'd be open to it. I don't know what you thought you were going to hear or what you thought self-defense looked like. Some of you had experience with it, some of you don't. But this is what self-defense looks like. It's messy. It's chaotic. It transpires quickly, and you don't have to make the best decision. That's not what the law requires. That's not. It's a higher bar than anybody could be expected to make. It requires that you make a reasonable decision, that you make a decision that you had a reason for. You watch those videos, you know there's a reason for the defense that he used. He's down on the ground. He's getting kicked, stomped, punched, and he's being given no reason to believe that that's going to stop unless he makes it stop. Nobody's saying, that's enough, guys. Everybody up. Just a few licks and then we'll let him go. That didn't happen. What did happen? People joined in the fray. There were at least 15 to 20 people out there, at a minimum. And you know that because if you watch that video, you can count them. Michael Sampieri, Sal Perry, Jacob Villalobos, Matthew Lockovich, Ryan Hines, Ty Wood, Tanner Chernowski, Tommy Connery, Charlie Connery. The list goes on. We heard about all of them. We see some of them. Alex Bernson. Some of them couldn't be identified. Those are at least the people that we can see. And Mr. Valle's down on the ground, getting kicked, punched, can't tell what's going on around him. Ryan Hines is on top of it. And Ryan Hines is punching him in the face. And Ryan Hines tells you, I didn't think he was aiming for me necessarily. Because he wasn't. He reaches in his pocket and he takes out the only thing that he's got there. The only thing at that point that he thinks is going to make them stop, because they've not given him any reason to believe that they're going to do so on their own. And maybe you're thinking to yourself, well yeah, but he said he brought a knife to a fist fight. No, he didn't bring that knife to that fist fight. He had that knife in his pocket because Jack Snyder took it out and threw it to him. And he's got some kids running down the way. He picks it up, sticks it in his pocket. Now you heard the state argue to you, well, you know, they submit that that's when he gave it to him now, is when we see it on that Ring video. Agreeing, I guess, with what Mr. Valle tells us, which is in fact, as you will recall, entirely different than what Mr. Snyder says, than what Keenan Frasick says. Snyder tells you he doesn't give him the knife until it's asked for, which again is completely ridiculous and unbelievable. But he tells you that happens after they're looking at the car. After he's dropped them off, driven down the street, leaving them there, comes back, and then everybody else who was still in the car gets out. Do you remember that? That was Jack Snyder's testimony. He didn't tell you that he threw it to him while they were right there. And Keenan Frasick, what does he describe? A mad scramble through the console, through the glove compartment. Where's that knife? Give me the fucking knife. Didn't happen. It's just unbelievable. It's not what Jack Snyder or anybody else describes. But Jack Snyder and Tyler Da Silva and all these other kids that are in that car, all these kids that had once been his friends, all these kids who haven't talked to him ever since that night, though they still remain very close with one another, Those kids all told you that Mr. Valle was the most upset of anyone there. More upset than Jack Snyder about his car. More upset than Tyler DeSilva, who was worried about the damages and how much it was going to cost. He was the most upset of anybody there. And he went into a rage. He was so angry. Gosh, I've never seen anybody that angry in my life. He goes digging through the car and this and that and the other. Why? Does that make any sense? Of course not. Not unless you start to think about what's motivating them to ostracize and distance themselves from Mr. Valle, to aggrandize what he was doing so that they can demonize it, so that they can wipe their hands of Mr. Valle. Oh, I had no idea. I don't know. He was so mad. He was so angry. I just thought we were just going to go get back in the car, and I was going to go make peace. It doesn't make any sense. Mr. Valle told you he and Tyler DeSilva were best friends. Again, it might have been mighty stupid to get back in that car. But there was so much stupid running around that night. And now Mr. Valle's the only one sitting here facing anything for it. Because he got in that car and had a pocket knife in his pocket. You'll recall not a single witness telling you that he got out of that car and came onto that lawn with that knife displayed. None of them saw it. He didn't get out dancing around with it, licking the blade, asking who wants a piece of this. None of that. He's not a person who carries a knife. It wasn't his knife. And mind you, one of the charges that you don't hear here is criminal trespassing. It was stupid to go on that lawn. I would agree with you. We could argue about that, and I would concede that. But it wasn't criminal under those circumstances. Those kids, for whatever their reasons were, had invited them there and wanted them on that lawn. What do they tell you? Did we hear a series of witnesses come in here and tell us all the things that they could remember so clearly? And they all could remember, I looked in the car, I might have been a long way away, but I could see Mr. Valle, and I could see Tyler DeSilva, and I could see Mackenzie Traficante, and I could see Jack Snyder. But then when it came time to tell us, well, who else was there with you? Who else went out into the front yard with you? I can't really recall. Really? But you told us that all those folks were your friends, lifelong friends, grew up with them from childhood, been over to their homes, so comfortable that when they got to the house, they could walk right up and go in through the Bilko doors. That they could go downstairs, nobody would even blink an eye, right? And when they got down there, they could see their friends, they knew who was there. But then when they all went outside, do you remember this? It was everyone got up. All of us went together. Oh, really? Who were you beside? Ooh, I can't recall that, actually, now that you mention it. Oh, okay. Well, who was at the car? Some of them told you. You know, there was a couple of us at the car, right? Maybe 3 or 4 of us at the car. Then others told you, no, there was maybe 10 of us that went to the car. And there were others that told you, no, there was more like 15 or 20 of us, and we were all around the car. Some of them told you, I didn't see anybody touch the car. I didn't see anything going on over there. It was peaceful, what I saw. And yet others told you, no, we had our hands on the car. We were rocking it. There was somebody bouncing up and down on the rear bumper. Who? I can't recall. Oh, okay, but you just went through a whole list of folks that you could tell us were there, that you saw downstairs, and you all went out together. So surely you must have seen Tyler Rich by the car. I don't recall. Oh, okay. What about Ty Wood? Where was he? I don't recall. You will have the opportunity to see all the evidence here as long as you want, as many times as you wish. Do a test. Do an experiment. Go through those witnesses. See when they can't remember things and ask yourselves if that's convenient, if it seems like they're protecting their friends. Or ask yourselves, is there something wrong with their memories? Why is it so selective? Why can they remember some things but not others? And do those things seem designed to protect their friends and themselves? Right? Tyler Rich has got to tell you that he told Tyler Da Silva to get the fuck out of here when he sees him on his lawn. Because what he can't come in here and tell you is he didn't tell him get the fuck out of here. He wanted him on that lawn. And he wanted for his friends and him to be able to jump them and get some payback. Because if he tells you that, and if he tells the cops that, then he and his friends could get charged. Maybe they get an immunity agreement. Who knows? But they certainly have to admit to some conduct that is criminal. And they're not gonna do that. They didn't do it that night. To the extent that they came in here and told you things that were different from what they told the cops before. I tried to point that out. I asked every single one of you during jury selection, probably looking at me like, what in the world is this all about? I gave you the parking lot example. Everybody remember the parking lot example? Right? I said, what would you be interested in knowing? Right? If you came out and you saw two strangers that you've never met before, and they're each pointing at each other and saying, he did it. And you look at your white car. Remember the white car? It's got a long red gash. Remember the red gash? I said, would you be interested in knowing whether either of them drove a red car? You guys looked at me, you're kind of like, I guess. And I said, okay. Would you be interested in knowing whether or not there was any objective, other evidence that you could look at, like surveillance camera footage? He said, yes, that would be interesting to me. And I said, okay. Would you be interested in whether or not there were any eyewitnesses or people who claimed to be eyewitnesses? And you all said, yes, I think I would be interested in that. And I said, would you be further interested in knowing where those people were standing and whether or not it was possible for them to have seen what they claimed to have seen? And you all said, yes. And then I finalized that and I said, and would you be interested in seeing how all of that evidence either aligns or doesn't? And you all said yes. I know you did, because I wouldn't have chosen you otherwise. That's your job, is to look at that evidence. It's my job, based on what you told me, to try and show you those things about the evidence that gives you some doubt about what you're being told. You're being asked to align yourself with Tyler Da Silva and Jack Snyder. You're being asked to condone that testimony and accept that and say, I don't have a reasonable doubt about what those two fellas told me. Again, would you trust those two fellas knowing that that had that kind of incentive under any other circumstances where you had a decision as serious as this to make? If they were the two guys, the paid spokespeople, that were telling you about a surgery that you should get, would you want to know what sort of value they were being given to tell you that that was what you needed to do? Of course you would. Would you make a serious decision and not have a reasonable doubt about it on the basis of those two folks? Would you trust that kind of evidence under those circumstances? Of course you wouldn't. Don't start doing it now. Why would you? You'll never forgive yourself if you do that. Don't overlook your reasonable doubts. This system is built on reasonable doubt. It's fundamental because none of us were there. We're looking at it after the fact, and we're trying to determine, has the state proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt? You may feel inclined to try and solve the crime or somehow make things right. That's not your job. You can't fix all the ills that led up to that night. Your job is to determine whether or not you have a reasonable doubt about what happened that evening based on the evidence that you've been presented. And I think you've got more than a single reasonable doubt. You've got reasons to doubt Jack Snyder. You've got reasons to doubt Tyler DeSilva. And you should heed those doubts. That's what the law tells you to do. Listen to your doubt. Give your doubt credence. It is, in fact, what binds us, because it's there for all of us. And if you don't follow that doubt and give it the credence that it deserves, you're not following the law. And you're leaving these seats in a lower place than they were there when you took them. Just as fundamental to our system is the presumption of innocence. And again, I know I asked every single one of you whether or not you could uphold that. Whether or not you could tell me as you sat there and looked at Mr. Valle that you could presume him to be innocent, despite the fact that he had been charged with these things. And again, we made it kind of easy for you. This is not a case of a whodunit. This is not a case where we're claiming somebody else, who knows. No, this is not a case about who did what. With the exception, perhaps, I guess, of Faison Teal, as I think about it. There's no evidence, really, to show you that what happened to Faison, cut on his arm there, was as a result of a stab any more than Faison coming in and getting in a couple stomps, somebody pushing him from behind, and him getting a cut there. There really isn't. But it's not about who had the knife. It's about why and whether or not that was reasonable. Did he have a reason to do that? Or was he just out there to kill somebody? The state gets a lot of things wrong about this case. But it got one thing absolutely right. This is a specific intent case. But it's not specific intent to murder. You know that. You sat here through all of this. There was no specific intent to go out and murder. In order to believe that there was specific intent to murder Jimmy McGrath, you would have to believe that Mr. Valle was some sort of trained knife fighter who knew that by taking a 3-inch pocket knife and inserting it between the 6th and 7th intercostal, that he could strike directly into Mr. McGrath's heart. Now again, he's no criminal mastermind, and he's certainly no trained knife fighter. What he was a 16-year-old boy, down on the ground, getting stomped and kicked. And the numbers were overwhelming. Was it 15? Was it 20? Were they all focusing their attention on him at one point? Were they all focusing their attention on Tyler DeSilva? In that chaos, that's not a determination he could or had to make. None of us likes violence. We're not up here saying violence is okay. That's not part of the argument. But what we're saying and what the law says is that when you have a reason to believe that you need to defend yourself, that you have a right to do that and to use the force necessary. And that's what he did. And how do you know that that's what he did? Well, I guess if the state's now conceding that he got that knife during that exchange down on 36 Laurel Glen Drive, when we see those folks coming up, then the state should also have to concede the following. He had that knife in his pocket, and he didn't take it out when those folks came up. And he didn't take it out when he got sprayed in the face with WD-40 or PB Blaster. Forgive me, I have no idea what PB Blaster is. But I understand it's something that you could spray out from an aerosol can. And he didn't use it then either, despite having it right in his pocket. That's a lot of control for a person that they want you to believe is basically a homicidal maniac. He can't be both. Now, when he's down on the ground, you may recall Ryan Hines telling you, again, I didn't feel like he was aiming at you. What else did he tell you about his position? Do you remember? You could see his arm doing this thing, but it looked like his other arm and his bicep were somehow stuck under him or pinned beneath him. Sure, because he told you he was in the fetal position down on the ground before he was able to get that knife out and start using it. And he had not just Ryan Hines on him, but all those other boys. You can see it in the video. You've got a couple different versions of that video, and I gave you Defense Exhibit B, and I'd ask you to use it, a frame by frame that you can go through as fast, as slow, focus in on a single frame, and you can see that there are two groups that peel off, that there are two folks that are wearing very similar outfits, and those outfits look very much like the lighter bottoms, dark blue top, some graphic on the back, the Jimmy McGrath, and Tommy Connery admitted to having been wearing that night. And you can see in some of those frames feet attached to those figures, kicking a figure down on the ground that is clearly not Tyler DaSilva because he's being subjected to a separate beating over to the left. And you heard about how there were two fights that developed, that one goes down over to the right and one's going on over to the left. And think about what he's facing at that moment when he's down on the ground, because that's what self-defense requires. Not us sitting here later in the cool hindsight of this room, the ability to say, look at this, look at that. No, it's at that moment when you're 16 years old and you're down on the ground and you're facing the entire Shelton High School football team that's pissed off and they already know about the fight at 5 Lazy Brook, right? You heard testimony. They got there and everybody was already asking them about it. One of the first persons that came up to ask Ryan Hines about it was Jimmy McGrath. Griffin Marcinzik told you, Jimmy McGrath's one of the toughest kids I knew. There was already a building fury in that basement. They didn't know about that. This bunch of idiots are in the car. They just got added to a group chat. People are talking shit to them, as they said. People that they claim they knew on social. Can we all agree that if you think you know somebody on social, you don't know that person? I think you guys have all gleaned what a Luddite I am by my inability to work this contraption over here. Knowing somebody on social, you just don't know anything about that person. These were all strangers, at least to my client. Now, you know they're not all strangers to Tyler DaSilva. Right? He told you about growing up with some of them. He told you about they knew cousins and things of this nature. And here they are, texting in the group chat, talking shit, and he says he thought it would be funny to tell them to come over to Trumbull High School because they were going to leave Trumbull High School, and if they showed up, they'd be gone. And then he told you, I saw a picture that got sent on the group chat, and I realized, oh man, I know some of these kids, and he left. He left the group chat. There's Tyler DaSilva, Jack Snyder in the front seat. And they're still going back and forth, and they're still going at it. Jack Snyder and Griffin Marcinzik are really going at it, right? Griffin Marcinzik is taking photos of the car out front saying sitting ducks. That's what he was facing when he's down on the ground. Not you and I coming up around him and saying, what's going on here, my friend? Perhaps you should not be here right now. This appears to be a bad idea. No, that's not what that video shows. And let's talk about the existence of that video. These kids were ready. They came out with their phones going. This was gonna be a trophy. Just like a hunter hanging a head up on the wall. Let's document this. Let's record this. Not, oh gosh, we don't want this to be going on. This scene's a little too violent. Gentlemen, let the young man up. No, we're filming this thing. And we're celebrating. You remember Tanner Chanowski up on that stand? When I asked him, can you identify whose voice that is saying, yes, sir? That was me. That was you? And you're saying, yes, sir! Is that celebratory? I don't know what you mean, celebratory. I don't know. I don't know why I said it. Oh, I asked, did somebody ask you a question to which the answer was yes, sir? Is that what happened? No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so either. And again, how many times did these guys tell you something here that they admitted they hadn't told anyone before? And how often were they telling you, we were all doing something. Everybody just went. I couldn't see this and that and the other. But then on cross-examination, they would tell you, oh, well, yeah, everyone was throwing something, but actually that was me that was throwing something. Everyone was screaming stuff, but actually that was me that was doing that. They wanted to minimize their involvement, generalize what they were doing, anonymize it, and scrub it clean so that they could come in here and tell you, we were just shocked to find this going on. You know that's not true. If you want to believe that, ask yourselves, why? Why do you want to believe that? Sympathy? Do you have any reason not to doubt that when they tell you that? These are people that are filming a beating, not just one. Ricky Fiola's filming too, right? We just don't have that film. Ricky Fiola's over there, he's got the camera out, he's doing this, and you can see him in some of these freeze frames that they show you, right? He's like this, and you can almost kind of see when he turns over, and he looks at the camera, and the light shines right in his eyes, and boop, get that little red, and he's kind of like, oh shit, right? Oh, I didn't realize somebody else would be filming me filming. And then he goes, and what does he do with that? He goes and gives it right to the cops, right? No. He takes it, and he shows it to some girls that were watching the thing go on. He wants to show them Tyler Da Silva getting beat because he thought one of the girls would like seeing Tyler get, and then he kind of drifted off, right? And I asked him, can you finish that for us? And he couldn't remember what it was that he wanted to show him for at that. There's no reason to believe that those folks were going to stop unless they were made to stop. And if you tell yourself that there's a reason to believe that they were going to stop unless they were made to stop, and if somebody back in that jury room tells you, no, he didn't have to do that. They were just going to stop and then let him up. Well, what's the reason to believe that? I'm asking, what's the reason to believe that? What's the psychology of a mob? What's the psychology of 18 to 20 boys and men? Don't forget, this is a boy at that time. Some of those folks there were men. They had already graduated. Right? They told you. Taylor Capella told us. It was mostly older kids there that night. What is the psychology of a mob? The problem with the mob is not what they do as much as what they might do. Because you don't know what they might do. So when you're down on the ground, you're getting kicked and punched and stomped, And again, we know there's at least 15 to 20 people there. It doesn't matter what these witnesses got up here and told us on the stand as far as saying, no, it was just a one-on-one, or maybe it was two of them talking with them. That's just simply unbelievable based on what we see there and what's going on that video. And we heard a little bit from some of the witnesses trying to tell us Raul's there on the lawn beside Tyler Da Silva. They're facing this big group of Shelton High football players that have started to circle them. He's not got the knife out, but he's going to pull back like he's cocked and ready to punch somebody. And who was that supposed to be? Ty Woods? You didn't hear Ty Woods tell you that, did you? No. You didn't hear a thing from Ty Woods. You heard the people that are trying to protect themselves from what they did tell you that that's why Tyler Rich just had to haul off, even though he was over here talking to Tyler Da Silva, and punch Mr. Valle, who again still had not pulled out a knife, even though he's got it in his pocket. Didn't even pull it out to say, hey, whoa guys, this is looking a little dangerous here. I think maybe you should all know, back off. No, at that point, Tyler Da Silva's still thinking he's going to make peace because he knows somebody's cousins. They know his cousins. Ricky Fiola and Tanner Chernowski are proof that everybody there knew what they were planning to do because they had their cameras ready to go. So those are the kind of folks that are kicking and stomping and punching Tyler Da Silva and Mr. Valle while they're down on the ground. And the first three folks that get stabbed, look at their wounds. Again, Faison Teal. He told you, well, I was sort of over on the side, and then I came in and I started getting in a few, what did he call them? Light stomps? Medium stomps? You ever been medium stomped? Anybody? What's a medium stomp? A stomp is a stomp. A stomp is somebody down on the ground. You don't stomp somebody who's standing up, do you? No. No more than you stab somebody in the legs unless you're down on the ground. Look at those wounds. One to the back of the leg. A couple to the front. Those are wounds that you give somebody when you're down on the ground. You don't bend down and give a couple here and a little there and let me get one in the back. It's just not how that happens. It happens fast because you're frightened and you're panicked and you're scared and you have a reason to believe that you've got to do that because nothing else is stopping them. In fact, you heard Mr. Valle. It scared him even more after he had to do that because it didn't stop. And you've got Ryan Hines. Look at his injuries. One to the ribs. What, when you're over top of him? When you're punching him in the face? Then further down on the side, and finally one down on the hip flank area. Again, what did he do? Mr. Valle was standing with him and went, one here, one here, one here, and one there. It makes no sense. It's not the way this happened. It's not the way self-defense happens. Again, it's not complicated. Doesn't mean it's not hard. Doesn't mean it's not difficult, the decision that you have to make. But it is not complicated. It is simple. He's down on the ground. He's getting beaten. He's getting stomped. The same thing is happening to his friend. Nothing is telling them that that's going to end unless he makes it stop. So with his arm pinned behind him while he's getting stomped and kicked, boom, Ryan Hines. Tommy Connery tells you he comes over and separates them, right? And he takes his place. Takes his place over top of him, pounding him on him? No, he's over there as well getting in his kicks. His leg gets stuck. Gets the side, the back, right? Now Ryan Hines tells you after he got stabbed, That was it. He had nothing to do with what happened to Tyler Da Silva. You know that's not true because you saw that video. You saw that green hoodie, black shorts with the white trim right over there on top of Tyler Da Silva, kicking him and stomping him with the rest of the group. Part of the state's argument here is simple. Who are you going to believe? Our witnesses or your lying eyes? Look at the video. Watch it, and you will see there are two groups here. You will see one group breaks off. That's the group that is beating on Mr. Valle, and then you can see them shove him into the road. He walks to the car. Thank goodness, at that point, Tanner Chernowski was filming. Because what do we see? Camera pans over. He's looking. What's he looking at? He's looking at where Mr. Valle is. Mr. Valle's by the car. He opens the door briefly. You see the light come on inside, the interior light. And then you see his head go just like this. Right? And we can see the side of his face. We see the profile. And you can almost hear the wheels clicking inside Tanner Chernowski's mind. It's like, what's he looking at? Now you see the camera pan again. Boom. What does that camera pan right to? Tyler Da Silva on the ground, surrounded, getting pounded on by a number of kids, right? Kids that are saying, yeah, come on, get some. Who wants a piece of this? Yes, sir. That's what's going on. Any indication those kids are going to just stop that at that point? No. Not a single reason to believe that they're going to stop. They didn't stop with my client until he had used that knife. And they gave him no reason to think that they were gonna until he used that knife. That knife was a tool. It was the only tool that he had available to him to survive that night. That was the specific intent that he had. The states charge specific intent crimes. Again, they're right about specific intent, but it's not specific intent to murder. It's not specific intent to assault. It's specific intent to survive. Because he had no reason to believe that they were going to just let him, that was going to stop. They were intent on pummeling him into unconsciousness at best, serious physical harm, almost certainly, and no way to know whether or not that was going to stop until he was dead. Just not. If you want to believe otherwise, ask yourself why. You're going to get an instruction on implicit bias. Is there something about the way my client looks, the way I am, that makes you think he's any less believable than those kids? That he deserves to have self-defense available to him any less than any one of us? That those kids, if they were down in that same position, wouldn't have done that exact same thing? Would it change your mind if he'd had a screwdriver with a 3-inch shaft in his pocket and that he pulled that out and used it? He'd have the same wounds, stabs and punctures. This is what self-defense looks like. Most of us have never had to think about that before, right? What does self-defense look like? I don't know. Maybe I saw it in a movie or something. There's no manual for self-defense. When you're down on the ground, there's no handbook that you can pull out and be like, page, getting stomped by group of, how many of you are here? Okay. Doesn't work like that. The law doesn't require you to go through that. Because if it did, you'd be dead. Maybe that's something that you've never thought about with the law. But I asked you guys, I know I did. Can you follow the law even if you don't like it? And I probably gave you some ridiculous example, like, have you ever heard the song, I Can't Drive 55? Right? There's a guy who doesn't like the speed limit rules, and he says he can't follow them. Well, this is a lot more serious than that, right? This is, can you follow the law even if you don't like the fact that somebody died? But the law is, you just have to make a reasonable choice? Did he have a reason to do what he did? Yes. Do you have any reason to doubt that? What is it? Because Tyler Da Silva told you that the fight was over when he got back over there? You saw Tyler Da Silva in that video. He didn't think the fight was over. He's in the street, hitching up his pants, facing back towards the group. And we can't see Raul at that point. Tanner's perspective is over here. We can see Jimmy McGrath a little bit on the side. And you heard Mr. Valle tell you. They were forming a semicircle. They were forming a horseshoe. And I asked all of those witnesses who watched that video, where did those kids go? Where was Charlie Connery coming from? Followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids. Who were those kids that were following him? One of them was Matthew Lockridge. One of them was Jimmy McGrath. Where were they coming from? Watch that video. Use the frame by frame. Go through that part closely. You'll see exactly where they were coming from. They're coming from just having been involved with the fight with Lito that shoved him out into the grass, out into the street. That's exactly where they're coming from. Now, he didn't have time to identify anybody. He didn't know Jimmy McGrath. That's probably the tragedy, the most tragic thing of this whole thing. These kids are practically strangers, at least when it comes to Mr. Valle, as to all of them. And with a stranger, you can't know. What is that person going to do? You have to make your decisions based on the information that they're giving you at that moment. Again, what's the information that he's got? These are kids that are going to attack the car. These are kids that are going to stomp, kick, punch, gang up on, film it, record it. For what? I asked Tanner Chernowski, why are you recording this? Oh, I don't know. I just do that. And then at some point he admitted to collect memories. He thought this was going to be a memory that he wanted to keep before he knew what the tragic outcome was. But when he thought it was just a beating and an assault that was going to go on, yeah, that was a memory he wanted to collect. That's who Tanner Chernowski is. That's who these other kids were. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, when he comes back onto the grass and he passes by Tyler Da Silva, at that point, I can't see any of those other kids that are there. I just see Tyler, and then I see a little bit of Jimmy. Well, you see a little bit more than that. Right? You see that hand? Remember that hand down here around the back on Jimmy? It's not his hand. It's Matt Lockovich's hand. Because they're side by side. Because they are part of a semicircle. This is a group that has been acting as a group the entire time. You're telling me all of a sudden this group has decided, oh, let's split up, let's single out. No. And in fact, you can see in the video, across the way, there's another person on the other side of Mr. Valle. He's got on a dark top and there's some sort of white lettering across the top. You may remember I was trying to point that out. You're going to have that evidence. Take a look at it. And ask yourself about perspective, right? Because when we're looking at things one way, we can see it like this, and these things appear to be very distant and far apart. But if I shift over here, now it looks like something else is in front. And ask yourself, wait a second. He steps into that place. These kids are all around him. They don't just disappear. And you say, okay, well, hold on. Charlie Connery's yelling, he's got a knife, he's got a knife. These kids are all backing up, right? Makes perfect sense, right? Thank you, Charlie. You solved that one for us. I think he did, inadvertently. Do you tell somebody who's running out of a house fire, fire, fire? I gotta warn you about the fire that you're running away from. No. You don't. You warn somebody about a danger that they are running into. And that's exactly what was happening here. He's got a knife. He's got a knife. Guys, don't go rush him. You need to back up. That's who you warn. You don't call off people that are already calling themselves off. Again, that just doesn't make sense. And you don't have to believe those witnesses just because it's their friend who died. You don't. And you shouldn't. And you wouldn't under any other circumstances. Some of you have experience doing workplace investigations. You know this is way more serious. These stakes are so high. Why are you going to believe these witnesses and this evidence under circumstances like this, when you wouldn't believe these folks, knowing what you know about them, their selective memory, their efforts to minimize and generalize and anonymize, not put themselves or their friends in any danger? Lay it all on him. So your duty is to look at this situation, the circumstances that my client faced as they were at that time. It's at least 20 versus 2. It's at least that. Could have been more. Some of these folks told you, oh, well, there's people watching. They're just sitting. They're just watching. Okay. You want to believe that, there's probably nothing I can tell you or should even argue to you. These folks had sprayed WD-40 in his face. These folks, 20 versus 2. That's 40 fists, 40 feet and legs. There's nothing that says the force he uses to defend himself under those circumstances has got to be identical. Just because they have fists and feet doesn't mean he can only punch and kick back. That's not what self-defense requires. It simply requires reasonable. Is it reasonable to use a 3-inch pocket knife that you didn't bring, but that you have in your pocket because your friend gave it to you? Under those circumstances? Of course it is. Look at these wounds. Jimmy McGrath, 1 wound. That's it. He's not trying to stab him over and over and over. He steps into this situation. Look at the amount of time between the time he steps onto the grass. And again, perspective. They want to try and tell you that that kid on the far side of him is not lined up with Mr. Valle. Look at the grass underneath their feet. Valle's on the grass. That kid's on the grass too. The line of the curve goes just like this. You know about horizon and perspective? They're almost side by side, those two kids. The other kids haven't gone anywhere. It's wet. You remember me asking all these kids, is it dark, wet, rainy, misty? I don't remember. You can see it in the video. You can see rain beating on the windows of the cars. Of course it's wet. And you heard Taylor Capella tell us he came onto the grass and he slipped. He spun around. And Mr. Valle told you he got punched. Somebody swung at him. Did you see Matt Lockovich's hand on Jimmy's back? Then all of a sudden it's gone. You can infer what happened there. Matt Lockovich takes a swing at him, and Mr. Valle told you, I just swung, I put everything I had into it, I was terrified. These kids hadn't stopped before when they were stomping me and I had to use that. They weren't stopping now. Did he have a safe retreat that he could completely and safely retreat? Of course not. Last time that he had tried to get up, these kids tackled him and went down again. And here they were coming again. And we know they were coming again because we hear them being warned. He's got a knife. He's got a knife. Again, you're not telling that to somebody who's not walking towards that danger you're trying to walk them off, who's not rushing towards that person once again. Mr. McGrath is holding the edge. These are all football players, right? They know what it means to hold the edge. He's holding the edge of that horseshoe, that semicircle. He is a threat just as much as anybody else in that mob at that point. Those are the circumstances that Mr. Valle was facing. That's what you have to judge him on. And if you want to believe these kids, look, you've heard about consciousness of guilt, right? Why have we heard this evidence about consciousness of guilt? It doesn't change anything about what happened down there on the ground at that point. It's just another effort to make my client look like some sort of criminal mastermind. He knew to go out and throw the knife into the woods. Well, let's talk about that. Who told us that that's what happened? Only one person. Jack Snyder. When he's in here singing for his supper, the jailhouse keys ringing in his ear, he's trying to give you something, trying to give the state something, to believe him. Oh, they haven't found a knife. I'll tell him he threw the knife down at the end of Adams, in the cul-de-sac. And then Chelton PD, Detective Bango tells you, oh, we went out, we looked for the knife, we couldn't find it. No knife. I guess that means Jack Snyder must be true. I guess Jack Snyder must be telling us the truth now about this. Tyler De Silva doesn't tell you anything about that. He's in the car. It stops. Nearly hits his head on the back seat. He's screaming at Jack about something. 1 or 2 seconds later, Mr. Valle hops back in the car. Mr. Valle told you. I got out of the car. I was feeling some pain. I looked at my ribs. He didn't tell you that he had the knife or that he did something with it. He told you he lost that knife, right? And he told you he lost that knife as he was running back, trips and falls. And what's he got on his hands? You've seen it. He's got 2 big, nasty strawberries on the heels, palms of his hands, exactly like somebody would have when they fell to the asphalt. Like it looks like road rash. And he lost the knife at that point. Do you have any more reason to believe Jack Snyder about anything, let alone that? Of course not. Ask yourself, if you want to believe him, why? Why do I want to believe Jack Snyder so badly? He's not giving you any reason to believe him. The text messages. Again, here's my client, a criminal mastermind, conscious of guilt. So he's texting with his girlfriend, who's also, no, she's 17. He's 16, she's 17. They're texting back and forth like he's going to convince her that he wasn't there. That doesn't make any sense. He was panicked. He was still scared. He had no idea what had just happened. Look what he'd just been through. He's not going to convince her that I wasn't there. And then he goes to Florida. He's 16. He doesn't go to Florida because he's trying to get away from things and he knows that he can go down there and escape. I don't even know if you can get on a flight when you're only 16 years old. But he gets on that flight because that's what his parents told him to do. And that's what you do when you're 16. When your parents tell you we're going to Florida. It's not a mastermind move on his part. It's just trying to make him look bad. He doesn't need any help looking bad, okay? Again, bless his heart, there was a whole lot of stupid going around that night. And that's my client that I'm talking about. Mr. Valle is no different than any of these other kids. And if you're telling yourself for some reason that you think that he is, ask yourself why. Look at the situation all these kids were in that night. How did they get there? These kids at 43 Laurel Glen Drive were like torches. My client and his friends, they were like straw. Throw those torches in there, put them all together. There's absolutely no way to know what is going to happen as that wildfire starts to catch and goes round on the front lawn of 43 Laurel Drive. But he certainly knew as he was down on the ground that folks weren't stopping with the stomping. They weren't stopping with the kicking and the punching. And so he used that knife, a tool to survive. If you're down in the bottom of a hole, dirt's being shoved on top of you, you're going to use a shovel to climb your way out. That's what he was doing that night. You have every reason to believe that.
Or a little bit over, so if you wrap it up.
Thank you, Your Honor. Folks, I'm not going to apologize for taking up a little bit more time. I do want to thank you for listening. I hope you will look at that evidence. I hope you will take your time with it. I hope you will all understand this is probably the most important thing you've ever been asked to do in your lives. And I will tell you that the law requires you, despite the tragic ending in this case, the law requires you to find my client not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Smith. I am going to go ahead and take a quick break before we continue on with this argument. So we'll stand in recess until 12:15. We'll come back at 12:15.
Your last question.